We're all misfits.
All right, you ragtag bunch of misfits.
You're a scrappy little misfit, just like me.
Biggest bunch of misfits I ever set eyes on.
Good morning, Misfits. You are tuning into another episode of the Misfit Podcast. On today's episode, we take a deep dive into our next training phase at misfitathletics.com. That's going to be our competition programming for semifinals and CrossFit Games athletes on the MFT program, open and quarterfinals athletes on the Hatchet program, and Masters and Teens athletes on the age group program. This podcast serves a couple of purposes. Number one, for people that have been following the programming for a while, I think it's just seems to be really helpful. It can be a little tedious on our end, but we get really good feedback on these episodes. So it's like maybe there's a bit of excitement, like things are about to change. We get into a new phase, a little bit of like more buy-in because we're explaining why we're doing things that the way that we do them. And then, you know, a bit of it is for anyone new here, an audition on our end. We take the way that we program very seriously, and there's a reason why we do basically every single thing that we do. We try to stress test them kind of in a group setting. So anyways, phase 2 starts Monday, November 11th, and something that we haven't done in a really long time. We're going to do a 2-week free trial. I want people to be able to see test week and week 1 of the program for free. So if you head to the link in our bios on social, you head to misfitathletics.com. It's going to take you over to Fitter to get signed up, and you will get those 2 weeks, first 2 weeks for free on any of the 3 programs. Before we dive into the nitty gritty, as always, we have live chat. Hello, Hunter. What you got going on?
Hey, Drew. Oh, man. I think I'm officially an old person, I guess, is what I'd say. Just a general old person. I got like mild to moderately excited to make butternut squash soup over the weekend. It's like, Jesus Christ, 12-year-old Hunter is running for the nearest bridge to jump. But and it came out like fine. It was like,
yeah.
I can make some improvements for next time. We talked about I need some bacon fat in there. I went with a very very plain recipe this time.
Okay.
But yeah,
this doesn't even bring into mention that we had brunch with Jen and Ted last week, and you and Ted talked about squash soup for at least.
We did talk about that. That was the impetus for it for sure. But it's hard to avoid when you walk into Hannaford and the first the little cart right there is just acorn squash. All the fall harvest is out there. But yeah, I'm a fucking nerd now. Just, butternut
the way that it happens
on Sunday afternoon.
The way that it happens is fascinating.
Yeah,
I remember being like, I don't know. I was gonna say a bad word, but I don't know what YouTube would do to me. I don't know what the worst version of a teenage boy is. It's like, I don't know, somewhere between 13 and 16, 17. I don't remember exactly, but I know that my dad brought up the idea of like a family trip to like New Hampshire and Vermont in the fall. And he's like, the foliage is incredible. And I just remember being like, did you say fucking foliage to me? Like, it was a like inside joke in our family for years because I was so irate about him trying to take me away from whatever NHL 97 and Godsmack. It's like, you think I'm going to go sit in a car with you?
Go watch
and
fucking
look at
leaves
leaves
when I can just...
Man, I love the leaves now.
They are great. I'll catch myself peeping as I drive down 95 in the beginning of October.
And the drive home,
nice place that we live.
The drive home up Gray Road, like that whole strip right by where
that's a really nice stretch.
It's crazy.
Yeah.
It's crazy. And I'm just like, man, 14-year-old Drew would be so mad about this.
Yeah. Keep my fucking head down and stare at the floor of the car. Just to prove a point.
I'm not going.
Fucking watching leaves.
Life chat on my end, I would say a combination of getting excited / geared up to head to Scotland. So when this podcast drops, I'll be on my way down to Boston to fly over to Scotland for Rogue. I think that's just going to be a really cool experience. I've always wanted to go to Scotland, and while I'm not going to have like a ton of like vacation time there, it just seems like my kind of place. So I'm super excited for that. And Steelers are 6-2.
Nice.
You know, I had a holy shit. So the platform that we use to push podcasts out to like audio versions has a new AI assistant, and it writes descriptions, and I gotta fucking
Oh,
do
yeah.
this. Because I feel like people probably won't listen to it. This is just the first paragraph of the episode description for the Q&A that dropped last week. What if indulging in your favorite guilty pleasure could spark a lighthearted debate? Join us as we explore the diskeys and the surprising caloric truths hidden within those crumbly bites. Our conversation meanders into the realm of football, where we dissect
Yes.
the quarterback quandary facing the Pittsburgh Steelers. Justin Fields or Russell Wilson? It's not just about skill. It's about the quirky charisma of Wilson and whether he fits the gritty essence of the Steel City. Whoa.
Nice.
Yeah.
Wow.
The fucking robot. Yeah.
Pretty good. Kind of aside from missing the whole premise of the entire
Well, it goes
podcast,
there.
Like,
Get ready to
it's a
discover the
pretty good-
lifelong benefits of CrossFit and why starting young may be the key to a healthier future. Deep dive into the emotional layers of
Oh,
the
okay.
CrossFit community. But the beginning of it, honestly, it reminded me so much of Bill Ellis. Like, that would be something that he would write.
Oh,
yeah.
Bill.
So maybe
Yeah,
the AI is
absolutely.
just Bill Ellis. Maybe that's what he's up to these days.
Bill is AI.
AI. Yes.
I could see that. Bill's just in a fucking cave, just answering stupid Chat GPT questions all day.
I found myself already feeling I feel bad for Russell Wilson. They interviewed him before the game, and it is very clear that he is aware of how people feel about him. He sounded so fucking nervous, like tripping over his words, like like, and he's, you know, polished media training, all of that stuff. And I mean, it was during warm-ups and they were flashing the lights on and off in the stadium and everything. But I found myself being like, damn it, I'm being mean to this poor man. And then he was fine during the game. So that's whatever. So I don't know if he's going to win me over. 6-2 is kind of nice. I'll take that, especially considering the Ravens lost to the Browns, which
Yeah.
is hilarious. You know what I don't ever get positive feedback on is me talking about sports. So I'll stop with that. Yeah.
Yeah, you won't get it from me today, but good job and stuff. I did have football on while I was making
Okay.
butternut squash
There you
soup,
go.
so if that makes anybody feel better.
All right. So phase 2 starts, like I said, Monday, November 11th. The majority of the people that follow our program, and rightfully so, very important start to the podcast, are on the Hatchet program. So a lot of what we talk about today will be under the impression that you're following the Hatchet program. We will say what the differences are with MFT. All of the mandatory, non-mandatory, sports-specific stuff is the same between Hatchet and age group. So those terms can be used pretty interchangeably throughout this podcast. Dare I say half of the people following MFT would have a better season if they followed Hatchet. So I'm just going to kind of throw that out there.
Oof.
Yeah.
That might be generous.
So something to consider. The majority, there's like, I don't know, less than 1,000 people in the entire world that should be following MFT, to put that into context. So if there aren't 1,000 people, or if there are 1,000 people fitter than you based on the open leaderboard, quarterfinals leaderboard, whatever, maybe reconsider. And we've had a Hatchet athlete in each of the last 2 seasons qualify for semifinals. People that took the advice, that listened to this podcast and sent me a DM and said, you know what, I'm going to do it. I'm going to go over to that other program. So just.
Kelly did Hatchet and qualified for the Masters CrossFit Games.
Yep.
So know if she's included in those numbers, but
So we're going to start with strength. I'm a meathead. I always start with strength. We actually talked before this podcast about like what the order of this podcast should be in terms of keeping people interested. Probably more important that we stay interesting throughout the podcast than what the order is. But we are basically going to outline the style of the lift and then what the lift is and make some connections to sort of phase 1 and phase 3. So our heavy lift for this phase is the squat clean. In phase 1, you had heavy back squatting, speed deadlift, trying to move the bar with velocity from the floor, and positional work in the clean. Does that sound like the correct precursor to heavy squat cleans?
yeah, I need strong legs, I need a fast pull, and I need good positions.
Yeah.
Weird.
So very much,
Not necessarily in that
right.
order.
well,
but
I mean, a lot of it depends
Yeah,
on
for
where
sure.
you're at as an athlete, right? So
Yeah.
that's going to be our heavy lift for the phase. What does that mean? That means you will be doing your sort of standard triple, double, single type programming twice a week. Because we have these longer phases that we adopted last year, we get to start from a place where we give you some momentum. So we get to start from a place where you're really going to be able to smoke the weights, and then you're going to get to a point where they're going to be a little bit more challenging. And with that momentum carrying you through, should really be able to like dig into the final few weeks there. Our volume lift is the deadlift. And something that you'll notice is the deadlift is our volume lift, and it is also in our sport-specific Metcon bias. And basically what we're doing here is similar to how we think about getting someone better at skill. So you'd be skill session, then in the Metcon, then a skill session, and then in the Metcon. Same sort of concept here. So you'll do your test that will have, heavy deadlifts in it for a significant amount of reps, really sort of putting under the microscope how you move the barbell in a Metcon. And then you'll have a week where you do sets of 12 and sets of 10 and sets of 8, and then you go back to putting it in the Metcon. You sort of bounce back and forth throughout the phase. This gives you an opportunity to like really develop your volume pulling when it comes to the deadlift in the standalone sessions, and then we ask you to breathe really heavy and do it. So we're just going to bounce back and forth throughout the phase through those things. Positional work is going to be the snatch. If you followed phase 1, we did some volume work there, and essentially we are, we're doing all of these other lifts throughout the year. We're doing our back squats, we're doing our squat cleans, we're trying to get you stronger. And the snatch is an intriguing movement because in a lot of ways it's an expression of strength and coordination and balance and mobility and so many of the 10 general physical skills. Yeah.
Power.
So we are getting you stronger in all of these different ways. We just did the volume work, which is much more applicable to the actual sport of CrossFit. We're going to check in on your positions this phase. So the positional work for the phase is going to be the snatch. And then in phase 3, we're going to go heavy. We want the expressions of fitness and the more complex movements biased closer to the season, which, I mean, I don't think requires a ton of explanation, but is something that works really well.
Yeah, and you can also just kind of follow along that the clean followed the same progression, right? Last phase we did the positional work, and now we're moving into some heavy stuff, and then the snatch work. This last phase did some volume work. This phase is positional, and then you get to go heavy next phase. So it all kind of follows the same cycle as far as, the progression from one phase to the next. The only thing I wanted to add on the squat clean stuff is that maybe more of a comment than anything else, but I like how, for the most part, I was just kind of scrolling through the entire progression here while you were talking about the snatching, but I think it's good. It's nice that I don't really see, aside from the heavy single at the beginning that kind of kicks off the session of the squat clean work, we don't actually see any like true heavy singles until week 7. It's all triples and doubles going back and forth a little bit to really give people the chance to build volume in the lift. And I think like your goal, if you let's say you're going into the clean phase this in a couple weeks, and you're like, well, I probably could have refined my positions a little bit better in the positional work last phase. Like, try to make that file that mental note away and apply the same thing with the snatch, because like you're going to see a very similar program for the snatch as you do the clean this phase. And it's, again, they build on each other. Let's not think about the phases in a vacuum. Try to think about how each phase builds into the next one. So refine your positions with the snatch, because it's going to be the heavy stuff that you're doing with the clean this phase with the snatch next phase.
There's something that I send now to all of my remote clients, and I think I've shown the graphic on here before, but I call it the ramp, and it's probably one of the more powerful epiphanies that I've had in the last like 2 to 3 years, where I force myself to, if we're going to do a progression, I force myself to ask the question, is the athlete getting momentum before they're asked to like really climb? So the visual is just basically the super ramp from my childhood, fucking Tony Hawk or Andy McDonald or Bucky Lassick. Yeah.
Fucking X
So that
Games.
the one where they go down
Shaun
that
White.
huge ramp and then end up, going back up and going over the jump. And the visual is if you put in the very bottom of that ramp, if you put someone on a bike, a skateboard, whatever, and said, I want you to push or pedal up this ramp and see how far you make it off it. That to me is what so many programmers do with their athletes, where they're just annihilating their central nervous system and beating their athletes up right at the beginning. And one of the reasons why athletes could gravitate towards it is because like you feel like you're getting something done when the resistance is really there and pushing back against you. We all know that getting stronger, getting fitter requires some sort of thing pushing against you. So you're beat up and you're like, this is how this is supposed to work. The problem is when we go to PR, when we go to the moderate weight to heavyweight doubles and then the super heavy singles, they're just not progressing in the way that we want them to. So this strength cycle very much is like 8x3 at 55%, is, proven by the Russian scientists who lock their athletes in the rooms to get you stronger. So we know how many reps, how much volume that we need at those lower percentages to get you stronger. And Hunter alluded to the fact that I probably check in on my technique at 8x3 at 55, right? 24 chances at 55%. That's a lot. And then by the end, while you're not beat up and you're feeling good about your technique and your speed, then we start really introducing those super heavy weights. The speed work for the phase. So really important here, the concentric portion of any lift being fast. That's what we're looking for. We're looking for force production is going to be the back squat. We developed a lot of musculature, and if you want to know what, the strength episode hasn't come out yet, so you guys are going to be excited. That'll come out after this. But the strength episode where we talk about sort of the different neural adaptations versus building muscle, a lot of those neural adaptations take place during that volume back squat phase that we just did, and you being able to express power in a bigger way will really help with the speed back squat. And if we're going to be cleaning heavy, we're going to be pulling, heavier deadlifts for reps. This is the best way to progress the squat without interfering with going heavy in those other places.
Yeah, you can only go super, super heavy on so many lifts so many times a week, especially with the other volume that's being done. And speed work is like that perfect bridge of a powerlifting movement, a slow lift being quote unquote slow lift being the back squat, to turn and to apply to a clean or to a snatch or something, an Olympic lift, something like that. Like, obviously there's something to be said about being able to pull heavy off the floor with like a conventional deadlift, but it doesn't perfectly translate to, say, the pull of a clean or a snatch, whereas, the back squat might actually like literally replicate that position just a little bit more closely, and being able to stand up a heavy weight, moderately heavy weight really fast has a lot of positive adaptation potential there. So, yeah, and just to be clear for everybody, like we're talking, what's a piece? Is this just like West Side style, like doubles and triples?
Yeah, so I can read you guys a session here. Week 2, so every 90 seconds for 12 sets, 2 speed back squats at 55%. And then the instructions allude to the fact that, like, if you're doing anything, you should be moving really well. But if you're going to isolate a movement and take it out of CrossFit, and it's a strength session, it needs to look right. And for the back squat to look right, its eccentric portion, you lowering yourself down into the squat, should be beautiful because it's 55%. And then when you hit that bottom, you're standing up as fast as you can.
Yeah, okay, cool. So I was going to, remind folks that eccentric, that's the lowering phase. That's nice and beautiful and under control. The concentric being like stand up, the standing phase, stand up as fast as you can. And again, like intention really matters a lot there. You'll hear it in the strength podcast that comes out next, but like it's 12 by 2 at 55% is like someone in an either uneducated or immature athlete says like, this is too light. Like I need to go add weight. And it's like, no, it's precisely as heavy as it should be. You need to move it as fast as humanly possible. Effort and intent really matters in those sessions. You can go in there and do 12 by 2 at 55% kind of
nice
willy-nilly without a warm-up, and you can check the box, like, congratulations, but you didn't do anything. So intent really matters.
Remote athlete visiting last week, and we talked about the statement of whatever it takes is kind of fascinating because you assume in so many scenarios that whatever it takes is dedicating yourself to going really fucking hard in conditioning pieces all the time. Like, I'm willing to, hurt and suffer and do X, Y, and Z. And it's like, what about the fact that you don't have access to your strength because you can't get into certain positions? So whatever it takes could be, an hour of couch stretch a week, working on your ankles and your squat holds every single time that you do that. And then when we look at this, it's like, whatever it takes for someone who is struggling to develop strength is staying locked the fuck in 24 times in that session to stand up as fast as they can after doing that. So it's not always, whatever it takes isn't always like brick wall. Okay, I'll run through that. I don't care. We need to understand what the application is, and in this one, for me, it's all about focus. Like, I do the speed pressing work every single week, and it's the same thing. It's 24 total reps. It's 8 by 3, and you got to stay locked in. Like, I'm trying to throw the bar through the roof every single time that I press it. And then I get stronger, and that's always cool. All right. As we move forward here, there's some divergence between MFT and Hatchet, as I explained. As the season goes on, there are more and more non-mandatory pieces, especially relating to things like strength and bitch work, because as the season goes on, you as an athlete really need to be able to personalize your program when you get the opportunity to. For people listening to this podcast that have no clue what I'm talking about, one of the foundations of Misfit Athletics is there's no one-size-fits-all program. So you're going to log into your program every day, and there are going to be instructions on complete this lift and this Metcon, and then choose one thing or two things or zero things from the rest of the program. And as the season goes on, with lifting specifically, there's going to be less mandatory lifts because we know that taking you through 5 lifts in a week of the squat, clean, the deadlift, the snatch, and the back squat sort of checks the boxes for most of the community. And then as we move into the non-mandatory stuff, the question is, do I need this? And then do I need this more than I need the other non-mandatory work over the course of, either the phase or the week or even just the day? So the first lift and the only lift that's actually split between the two programs is going to be volume push press. So mandatory for MFT athletes, pressing endurance at a higher level in CrossFit is incredibly important. And on the hatchet side, it's definitely important, but it's athlete dependent a little bit. Like if I've got an athlete that's just all day upside down on their handstand walking and their strict, handstand push-ups and their kipping handstand push-ups, I'm not going to have them do the push press. I would tell them not to do it, to skip it for the phase. And then there's obviously the other side of the coin. There are a lot of people that struggle with pressing endurance. So it's definitely something that can be put in for a decent amount of the athletes. In phase 1, twice a week, strict press. I don't think we see any more of the really hideous strict press. We used to see it way back in the day, standing bench press shit. We don't see that as much anymore. We still see it.
Yeah, we just see it with handstand.
Right. We see it a decent amount in the push press, though. We see some weird shit in the push press in terms of the sequencing versus like jumping vertical versus sending your hips out, being in your heels too much or your toes too much versus a balanced foot. This is a skill progression exercise. It doesn't have a huge place in the sport. Every once in a while, they'll give us a shoulder overhead that's incredibly light. And even then, sometimes it's arguable, depending on what the other movements are, that still just fall into the bar because you get to use your legs a little bit more. But what I mean by skill progression is if it's not in the sport, what are we trying to mimic? We're trying to mimic being upside down on our hands or push jerk or split jerk. And if you do any of that wacky shit and push jerk or split jerk, it's not going to go very well. So just something to keep in mind. I would rather see, the test is a 10 rep max. I would rather see, chin tucked, vertical torso throughout, than adding 5 or 10 pounds and doing your standing, heaving bench press where your head is a foot behind the bar and then a foot in front of the bar. That sort of thing.
Yeah. I think the point that says that you made that was like, hey, it's like we don't really see the lift tested very often, and for pretty good reason. Like it's like, why do a push press when you can do a shoulder to overhead or a push jerk? Like if it's light enough, people will push press, and that's fine. But like it's very much a kind of auxiliary lift that just ties in your strict press and then your jerk. So if you're somebody who struggles overhead with like the push jerk, push press is excellent. If you're somebody who doesn't do well with, inverted handstand movements, pressing, that sort of thing, it's a great movement because it allows you kind of overload that position with either weight or reps. But in either instance, it's in no way beneficial to compromise your mechanics in favor of lifting more weight. Like it just doesn't, it doesn't matter in that regard. It's like more weight on the push press done poorly does not equate to better handstand push-ups or a better shoulder to overhead. It just equates to a better number for that single session, which is a little bit short-sighted. Sure. So really, really useful tool, but that has to be
probably maybe the best example of a non-mandatory lift in the context that we just talked about is heavy bench press. So like I guarantee every single fucking
non-mandatory, never heard of her.
Every person listening to this knows whether they need to do heavy bench press or not. Don't they?
Yeah.
I mean,
I mean, I don't know. I think a lot of CrossFitters would say like my bench press sucks,
that's
so
fine.
I need to work on it. And they might be right.
Sure.
There's just because of how little we do it. But again, it's like this is a very specific person that we're talking about, and given the frequency of
on the
lift,
male side, there's at
being
least
tested.
a 30% cohort that knows better than to choose this lift. I'll say that. Yeah.
Sure. Yep. Yes. Okay. Fair.
Split jerk. This one is a gray area. It's the opposite of the bench press. There's a lot of fucking strong people that do not put the heavy barbell over their head very well. A lot of them. It's heavy, but in the context of a weakness. So what do I mean by that? Traditional heavy lifting, triples, doubles, and singles are going to get us stronger. When it's non-mandatory, a lot of times we go to 4s, 3s, and 2s because we're forcing the athlete to prove to themselves that they're heaving strict press and then coach is looking, so now I'm going to drop into a lunge, is actually repeatable. because it's the sport of fitness and they ask you to repeat the movements. A lot of times if you're pulling out a split jerk in the open or quarterfinals, it's going to be a multi-rep heavy clean and jerk. You don't get that one opportunity to go in and just, I'm strong, watch this. I can tell you from personal experience that second rep does not go that well. You got to be able to move really well. So split jerk, non-mandatory lift there, but even though it's heavy, my advice would really be to dig into your positioning. Had an aha moment with a remote client recently where the like barely dropping onto the bar and having sort of that straight back leg versus really pressing onto the bar and having the bent leg debate was coming up a little bit. Mm-hmm. And the thing that worked best for them was me basically saying the version that you are doing is a power snatch or a power clean. And the version that I want you doing is a squat snatch or a squat clean. You can snap into a really good position up to a certain weight in a power clean, in a power snatch, and in a muted, sort of press under in the split jerk. You can really heave that bar up. You can stay fairly connected to it, at 60%, 70%, depending on how strong that you are. But then the reason we're doing this lift is because when you go to do a 1 rep max clean and jerk, you typically can't get the bar overhead once we're up into that realm. And having that click and be like, okay, we need to turn around sooner, and not see how high we can dip drive the barbell seemed to be kind of a big thing there. And I would urge people, there's absolutely no point in a like heaving split jerk strength phase. Just don't do it.
I mean, I like that comparison a lot.
I was hunting, man. I was trying to. This is a very like cerebral athlete, takes the cues really well, and this one just wasn't clicking. And I was like, I always try to. I call it bridging, but I'm trying to find context that already like lives in their head.
Yeah. If you ever watch like the Hook Grip Instagram page, and you're watching athletes warm up when they just like show lift after lift from like the empty bar up to 15 kilos on each side, then they keep adding weight. Like you'll notice when they're warming up that clean and jerk, the split jerks that they do with those light weights is exactly that. It's like almost like a power. It's the power equivalent of a split jerk where like
drive.
They're not really getting that far under it. They're priming the dip drive. It's a super explosive. They're catching it very high. They're even catching it with like what you'd say like not great mechanics if that were a 1 rep max, but they don't need to dip under super far. They keep the back leg relatively straight, but again, for the purpose of kind of like warming up and priming that explosiveness. But as the weight gets heavier, they do get lower and lower and lower until you actually see what, a true split jerk actually looks like. So if you're looking for a visual comparison, that's a place I'd go. It's like, when Hook Grip posts those things, it's like, athlete goes from power clean plus a front squat to like a power clean and then down to a squat clean as it gets heavier. Same thing with the jerk.
With the power snatch, we're going to be alternating back and forth between speed work that has PAP attached to it. I'll explain that here in a second. And then heavy work. I'm trying to help athletes here make that connection between why can I move the bar fast, say around 70% in a power snatch, and then things get weird when we get up to 80 and 90. And it's honestly dependent on the athlete. I find most athletes, when the bar feels heavy in their hands, they rush the pull. So like their power position becomes like mid thigh. And then of course, trying to navigate a barbell that's 6 to 8 inches away from your body versus at your hip is a totally different movement.
Yeah. Yeah. And then their squat position turns into a split jerk position.
So with the speed work,
it's backwards,
I'm trying to prove to them that at that weight, it's not just faster, it almost feels twice as fast because they let the bar travel to their hip before they get aggressive with it. And the PAP that we're going to have here is what I refer to. I don't know what you would call this, Hunter. I explain it, but I call them ski jumps, where you're essentially getting into that like ski jumper position. So you're in like a quarter squat, but your arms are like in line with your torso, and then you're jumping and reaching as high as you possibly can.
So my arms stay
No.
here,
So-
like at chest height, or they go down to my side and like.
Yeah. So
Oh,
that
okay.
like ski jumper.
I would just call that. I call it like
Yeah,
a vertical.
But I wanted
leap.
people to really
Yeah.
visualize like getting their torso and their upper body involved as well. So you'll switch
Sure.
back and forth between that. If you listen to this podcast a lot and have listened to the Phase podcast, this is something that has been tested quite a bit for me in the remote coaching setting, and it's like this works really well, so we're going to bring it over to sort of the masses, just in terms of the speed work here. Speed work on the power snatch and on the power clean with the PAP seems to really make an adaptation. And is that technique based? Is that like, I finally understand what you mean, let the bar travel to your hip when it gets heavy? I don't know, but it works and people get stronger, so I like it. Last but not least here, this is the final phase where the in-WOD lifting will be non-mandatory. Basically, you are in your warming up to a heavy single, double, triple, set of 5, whatever it is, of the lift that is in the interval. And then for the most part, that lift in the interval is going to be percentage-based. We need to take athletes who are trying to work on their strength and like, you know, you have 9 other opportunities to get stronger in a vacuum. The 10th opportunity has to be checking in on how that is going and how you would strategize it under fatigue. And a lot of times we're nice to you. We tell you to pull a heavy deadlift and then go run. And then a lot of times we're not nice at all. You have however many EchoBite calories, and then you got to, you know, do a bench press or something like that. So I just think that like building strength is something that athletes will really dig into and really take seriously, and then struggle to bring it into a situation under fatigue.
I think it's appropriate that it only pops up. It's just once a week, right? Yeah, I think it's because again, like if it were every single day, my argument would just be like, well, we're just reducing intensity
Yes.
of like the conditioning piece, right? The purpose of the conditioning piece is to improve our fitness, and what we see, even athletes who aren't classified quote as strong, let's take like someone most folks know, like a Haley Adams, right? Like exceptional world-class engine. If she was a little bit stronger, she'd probably be the fittest woman on earth, but she's still able to move through workouts with a heavy barbell because her fitness level allows her to do so. So it's not a like, if you're listening and you're like, oh, I need to get better with a heavy barbell in a Metcon, like we still need you doing your lifting work as lifting work. We still need you doing your fitness work as fitness, whether that's a Metcon interval or bitch work. And then the occasional, the once per week in-WOD lift session can be that check-in. But we start to do that too often. That's just the equivalent of, you know, doing a Metcon with the wrong weight on the barbell such that it slows you down too much. These pieces are programmed to accommodate that kind of percentage-based style of
Whenever
lift.
I see when I say community, I mean the community of the CrossFit Games, basically anyone who's participating, open, quarterfinals, semifinals, CrossFit Games, that sort of thing. Anytime I see an athlete IQ like blunder by the masses, I make sure that it is present in the programming, if only just to be like, are you going to keep doing this wrong? People,
Hey, idiot, you sucked at this,
there's a reason
remember?
sprint intervals come up a lot in competition prep. There's a reason why fucking Hatchet crew, get ready for more burpee box jump overs and wall balls and double unders. Like there's a reason why something will keep showing up in the programming over and over, because we see at a very high level, like just athletes executing the workout wrong, doing the wrong thing. Like My favorite example is the person who continues to try to squat snatch the overhead squat at a weight that it's like, oh, I'm a strong guy. 225 is whatever. And it's like, yeah, heart rate's at 180. Like, you clearly cannot do that. Will you please clean and jerk it and start overhead squatting?
Please put that
my
bitch on
God.
your shoulders and take it overhead.
And until more athletes learn the trick in the Misfit community, we just keep programming it. So that's where that comes into play. All right, moving on to our sports-specific focus is going to be your metcons and intervals. Season progression. So you guys in phase 1, front squat, toe to bar, double under, wall ball, burpee box jump over. Fairly low skill, but pretty high return on investment in terms of like you get fitter and stronger from doing those things in metcons. That is the left side of the spectrum that we're on here, and we're taking it through the season from left to right. The more we talked about the like expression of fitness, your leg lifts, rope climbs, clean and jerk, muscle up, handstand push up in a lot of ways, the more complexity that's there, we want those to be closer and closer to the season, so that you really feel like you're building your fitness to a point where you're then able to express it. So that's why the biases are there. And again, these are just the biases that are in this are the most programmed movements in the sport. They keep programming this stuff over and over and over. So we are going to bias it. Metcons, deadlift, and rope climb. Hunter, you must be so excited about that. Bet you wish you were following the program for that.
Easy.
Fuck.
Love it. Yep.
A lot of people who
love
would
me
not
some
like
grip.
you if they watched you do a deadlift rope climb workout. It's kind of annoying.
Yeah, no, but that's all right. I don't like watching anybody else do 275 clean and jerks at the end of a Metcon.
true.
So you guys can fucking piss off.
Medium
for a phase.
duration, gas focus. Yeah, I mean,
That not so much. We can change that.
You
up
want
a
what, long muscle endurance? No.
Fuck. No, please. If
Sure.
it's long, that's fine because I can
Yeah.
outsmart everybody else.
Yeah.
But yeah, short muscle endurance.
So
don't
you
do
guys
that.
will deadlift and rope climb in a Metcon every other week. You will go short, you will go medium, you will go long, you will be in couplets, you will be in triplets, you will be in rounds for time, you will be in AMRAPs. Or put you through the paces on those things. And then on the opposite weeks, each of those things separate. You go work on them in practice with your rope climbs, and you go do your volume work with the deadlift. Interval work bias is going to be snatch and GHD sit-up. This is a long duration gas focus. Everyone's favorite.
I'm out.
Everyone's favorite. It's supposed to be
out.
power snatch, but Hunter would be squat snatching. So Hunter's going to be squat snatching and GHD sit-upping.
Easy.
I will put this out there.
I'm still gonna
one
be
of the most
faster.
programmed movements at quarterfinals level and above. Hunter has the theory that this will pop up less often because they are now letting more people into quarterfinals. So we'll see if that holds up. Do you remember talking about that? Yeah.
The GHD? Yeah. Yeah, it's more of just a
Sure.
logistical thing
Yeah.
think, than anything else. Also,
Having that many people do high rep
It's like-
GHDs is
yeah, there just aren't that many movements. Like for the most part, my CrossFit coach brain can come around to like certain movements having their validity in both fitness in general and in like the sport. And again, I can garner up a pretty good rationale for why GHDs are useful and why they're unique and different, because they are. But that doesn't change the fact that I fucking don't like them. And I think
they don't have a lot of fans.
But
I think maybe someone would
They
stand on
don't.
their soapbox for them because they're good at them.
yeah, they're like it's the affiliate athlete who does 100 as a finisher
Yeah.
after every class. It's just like beach season, baby.
Hey, I mean, from the like bodybuilding perspective, in terms of eccentric and then stretching a very large muscle group and then contracting, like it's, It works.
Yeah, I mean, like,
I just don't need people
yeah, just so
snapping
I
that
mean,
many.
and so people
150
are.
times? Come on, that's too much.
Yeah, it's just a lot.
It's always
and
used
just
in that
like,
way.
I don't
it
know.
seems
We
to
can.
be as well. It's always high rep.
Yeah. Yeah, I think that my justification. Well, they did the lower rep for the Masters. They finally did that cardio workout. It's
But
just a
that was
fucking
dumb
nightmare for
because
people
it
to get in
was
and out of that bitch.
people were like, Sherb was like falling out of the GHD onto his head to do handstand push-ups. Like,
Right? Yeah.
okay. Come on.
Yeah.
Come
Exactly. So, yeah, I can. Yeah, if you want to hear me justify why the GHD is an excellent movement, I'll fucking do it. I'll rip it out.
I don't think. Yeah, I don't think
Maybe
we need
not
to
right
do
this
that.
minute.
So yeah, like we probably, this is similar to what Hunter was just saying about the GHD. I could force Hunter to wax poetic about deadlifts and rope climbs and snatches and GHD sit-ups in the context of metcons and intervals that are long, medium, and short, and have cardio, gas, and muscle endurance, and couplets and triplets and AMRAPs and all of that stuff. You guys are listening to a competitive CrossFit podcast. I don't think we need to sell you on metcons and intervals. Yeah. Okay.
Please no.
Bitch work. Everyone's favorite thing. My favorite thing. To program in a lot of ways because I just know that if executed, it moves the needle for every single athlete. There's a truth to just sitting down on a machine or going for a run, etc., and moving the needle in your fitness. Probably the place where there's the most difference between MFT and Hatchet. So Zone 2 work for Hatchet is going to be on the ski erg. We talked a little bit about lack of pressing endurance for a lot of athletes. This also could pull into play like pulling endurance as well. So you're pulling gymnastics. The ski erg has the ability to, on a lower damper setting, because there's already a higher strokes per minute, has the ability to develop slower twitch musculature in the upper body, which is incredibly helpful in a CrossFit setting. It's crazy. Like the way that we always explained it at camp was walk around on your fucking legs all day. Like even with your trunk, you're very much like supporting your body. You are literally just developing slow twitch fibers all the time, your whole life, in most of your body, except for your arms. They ain't doing shit. They're just dangling. They swing a little bit. So your swimmers growing up and your rock climbers and your people who have this weird instance where they use their upper body in a like higher frequency, like you would with your legs on a bike or walking or running, etc. Those are the athletes, even rowers sometimes, that really come into the sport with a leg up on a lot of people through this weird avenue. And I've definitely found for me personally, like being a more power athlete, like I do not have pressing endurance. And people say that that's not true. I'm just telling you right fucking now, like there's no good strategy for me in pressing workouts, because it's like, oh, fine, I was just being dumb. I'll not do the first set. I'm broken. Second set feels the fucking same. So this made the biggest difference for me in my handstand push-ups and muscle-ups for sure, for capacity. So Zone 2 work is going to be on the ski erg. For MFT, you're going to choose between skiing and rowing. Good thing is, if you're sort of struggling to choose the bigger weakness and then do the other one on your active rest day. So if you're like, I like this idea of the ski being the one, do that on Mondays, and then on Thursdays do a Zone 2 rowing session. You'll get both in. If you have a glaring weakness, you can really move the needle by doing it twice a week. If you have the mental fortitude, the whatever it takes conversation comes back. Am I willing to ski for 90 minutes a week? Maybe you are, maybe you're not, but just sort of something to put out there. Both programs have the FTP test that is going to make your Zone 2 percentage based. We got some pushback on the lower percentages, and I'm telling you that your 20-minute test was not accurate. It's not that the 55% isn't accurate. So 55% at the beginning is meant to be very easy. You're sort of flirting with the whole zone 1, zone 2, especially over the course of the entire 45 minutes. You are going to do, on day 1 of phase 2, a 20-minute FTP test. You're going to see how, like, the highest wattage that you can hold. There's a calculator that we link to that takes you to concept 2 where you can convert 500 meter split pace to watts. So you're not like, I don't fucking know. How am I supposed to know what I can hold for wattage? And there was an athlete who I know and is like 6'5" or something that was like, well, this means that my wattage is like 115 or something like that on the rower. I can't get my heart rate above 100. And it's like, well, I just did the math on that, and that means that you can only hold a 201 for 20 minutes, and I'm not fucking buying that.
Yeah, I was gonna ask, where's the rubber meet the road? Is it just like, hey, you had to try harder on your 20-minute FTP tests? Like we need
an
a
accurate
more
number,
accurate representation of your.
So for anyone that didn't see that in phase 1, you do the 20-minute test. I have a spreadsheet that I always send out in Discord, free group, discord.gg/Misfit Athletics to get signed up. That spreadsheet will just do the math for you. You put in what you got on your FTP test. It'll give you your functional threshold pace, and then it'll do the percentages over the course of those weeks.
Where is that test? Oh, ski or wattage test. 20-minute row for average watts. Yeah, I just wonder if it's like, find out your maximum sustained pace. Yeah, I just wonder if the verbiage is like that kind of, it could be almost like felt like, oh, 20 minutes sustained effort. Got it. Like, I'm going to try kind of. It's like, no. This is like 20-minute max distance,
right. Yes.
Whatever. At the end, scroll over and see what your average wattage was or something. Like, this is
It's a time trial.
Like,
yeah.
It's just meant to say, like, hey, don't game this by like sprinting for the last minute to pull your average down. You know, it's supposed to be a sustained effort, but it is like you're supposed to go as hard as you can sustain for 20 minutes. Not here's 20 minutes of fucking around. It's like you just rode a.
I've done it multiple times on the C2 bike, and it is fucking terrible. I did watch a YouTube video where they're talking about how the 4 by 5 minutes in your brain is so helpful. So like I choose my pace for the first 5 minutes. And then as I'm coming up on it, I'm like, was that the right pace? Do I need to drop 10 watts? Do I need to add 10 watts? And
interesting.
Mentally, it's much smoother going through that because you go through the 6,000 phases of grief during the 20-minute test. You're kind of all over the place. So yeah, I really just wanted to put that out there. This is your highest average wattage that you can get on either of those machines.
Yeah, and you should also have, like, let's say for whatever reason that you don't do the piece, or I don't know, whatever. You hopefully have data points from phase 0 that's like, what's your 5K ski time? What's your 5K row time? And those are, that is in that 20-minute time domain range. You can either, you can use that. I'm not advocating for skipping the test and just using that information, but like you have a rough benchmark for what that is. So if you wrote if you're holding a 148 for your 5K and then you're saying we did a 201 for your FTP test, it's like, that's just incorrect execution.
Aerobic bias for the Hatchet program. This is one of those community-wide situations. It's going to be CrossFit. You're going to be doing CrossFit-style bitch work. We have a brand new Misfit benchmark called Spiders on Mars that was tested all the way from affiliate athletes up to top 10 games athletes. We got a lot of good data on that. We're able to get it kind of locked in for what we're looking for. In Hatchet, you will be basically adding rowing to the burpee box jump over wall ball and double under that you did in phase 1. So we had that test, and it's like, yay, here's more. The good thing is the way that we get to volume with a lot of these movements is going to be with the rower. So in a lot of instances, it's going to be like, okay, or telling you exactly how fast to row. It's going to be your first gear, your second gear, your third gear, and then what do those gears look like in CrossFit? Like if you get off the rower and you've been rowing at a 155, what does 35 wall balls feel like into 100 double unders, into however many burpee box jump overs, that sort of thing. So basically the thing that we choose that we think is the most important for the entire year in terms of bitch work is the one that goes zone 2, aerobic, anaerobic. That transition works really well. So we went zone 2 row. Now we're doing zone 2 sort of CrossFit and rowing or aerobic, and then we'll do anaerobic in phase 3. Anything there, Hunter? It's just it's just a athlete IQ situation for so many athletes figuring out how to execute. Same concept here. Zone 2 in phase 1 for MFT athletes, semifinals and CrossFit Games athletes was running, and now we bring that into the aerobic realm here. So it'll be zone 2, then aerobic, then anaerobic. Something that we've used for years now on the machines is a test that I call Mount Doom. It is essentially your step test that so many of you have done. Hunter did the original test on the ski erg. I don't know if you remember that way back, but it's, add however many calories. I had a really great feedback from remote clients last year on the that test being done on the air runner. So we have a version of it, and we actually have a warm up and a way to personalize it so that you're calibrating it based on your treadmill. So not everyone's going to start.
I was going to say, I was looking at the instructions. Like, am I starting at 1?
Kind
God
of.
Damn it.
Kind of are, yeah.
Kind of are. But
So you basically, through your warm-up, find out what calorie number to start at, and then it just becomes your traditional type step test. So anaerobic, Hatchet, what do you think it is? Can you guess, Hunter?
I don't know, man.
It's rowing.
I don't know.
Sorry, guys. You got the rowing cube test. Everyone's favorite cube test, I think. I think probably the least amount of pain dished out over the course of all the cube tests. The fact that you can use your legs and your midline and your upper body usually makes it easier. Can't really get the heart rate up. I'm joking. Sorry.
Yeah, I disagree.
It's so
I don't
bad.
like it. The one time I did the rowing cube test, I was at operating at like 43% capacity at affiliate class, and I did not try very hard, and it was still terrible. It's like, this is fucking stupid.
Ability to repeat.
I specifically tried to make this not hurt.
The ability to repeat jumping off a cliff is weird, because you're supposed to splat at the bottom, but that 4 minutes of rest is like a.
It just kind of cripples you a little bit every time.
It's like
try again.
In a video game. You're
Try
about
to land
die
more
in the
directly
video
on your
game,
head
and then
next
there's like a
time
tube you can slide through, and it shoots you back up to the top. That's what the 4 minute rest does.
Yeah.
So if you've never done a cube test before, you might think you chose the wrong pace, and then it turns out you didn't. So that's just always super fun. MFT athletes, this is definitely a part of the way that they've changed the programming at a super high level. We have the Echo Bike for the first time as an anaerobic bias here. So you've got running and Echo Bike as the aerobic and anaerobic, the most programmed movements in.
Can you use it 17 times in the competition, but we're not going to let you warm up on it?
Fuck.
No,
God damn it.
Can't. You're going to store them.
We are
in the shipping
transitioning
container.
from aerobic C2 bike, really getting the legs conditioned, logging our meters before we get on the Echo Bike in phase 2. Yeah, I mean, it's really just us reading the tea leaves a little bit here. We can make progress on any of those machines, like I alluded to at the beginning. So if CrossFit's going to tell quarterfinals athletes, your bitch work is literally all rowing, burpee box jump overs, wall balls, and double unders, that's going to be the majority of your programming. And the same thing, there's a caveat to that we'll get to at the end that we always do. But same thing goes for running an Echo Bike. If they're going to program it that much, we have to be able to move the needle. And the Echo Bike requires a lot of time to get better at it. It's like there are athletes who are like, Coach, my first gear is 62 RPMs and my 8th gear is 64 RPMs. Like the window is not large on that machine. And if that's the case, then we got to put more work in it and develop the different energy systems. Power output work is now non-mandatory on all programs, but it is the C2 bike. Another favorite for power output. Like, not that bad. You can usually walk pretty well afterwards. You can repeat power round after round. It's almost like it's easy. I'm being an asshole again. My only note underneath it just says, ouch. It's 50 cals / 35 cals for time is the test. So
Mark Kubek has entered the chat.
Power output work, it's necessary for every athlete in a certain dose, but it's not like we need to bias this over the course of the phase as we get closer and closer to the year. If you're a monster and you can put the fucking pedal down on that thing and repeat it, you don't need to be doing that for a bias.
Yeah.
All right. We just talked about all of those things. We brought up deadlift, rope climb, snatch, GHD, skier, rower, spiders on Mars, hatchet, row cube test, etc. And I always warn people, or warn myself, like a bias for us on a lot of these things is every other week over the course of the program when it comes to these things. Guiding principle is still variance. These things aren't going to come up as often as the podcast makes them seem. They come up in a dose where you can use linear progression, where you can track how you're improving. You will definitely get better at them, especially if you bring your athlete IQ along for the ride. But we're not going to overload our programming with the same movements over and over. Getting that specialized does not work. Theoretically, it seems to work. It seems to work on paper. And then you go to do open workouts and quarterfinals workouts, and you wonder what the fuck is going on there. There's this weird hidden magic in variance that honestly is explainable in a lot of ways, but I like to think that like anytime we stray too far from it, you just get that this is something that happens that nudges you back to like, I want it to be a bit more scientific, and it just doesn't feel that way, but it works.
Yeah, that's funny. My final thoughts on it were actually going to be like, we just spent an hour and 2 minutes talking about all of the kind of nuances of the training phase, but like those nuances account for like, I don't know, probably like less than half. Well, I guess it's about half of the programming. I think the point is that we just gave you a shitload of information on what is being programmed for you. You don't need to like, don't get yourself wrapped around the axle of like, am I doing everything? Like the programming is going to be there, and by simply executing the mandatory pieces and then choosing your weaknesses, you are executing the program in the way that we are hoping that you do, after listening to the podcast. So don't like, it's not time to take out the pen and paper and write down all of the answers here as to what we're saying is going to be programmed. It's more like, hey, just so you guys know, there is thought process behind, the progressions of movements from phase to phase, with the end goal of making you your fittest when, it's your Super Bowl, whether that's the Open, quarterfinals, semifinals, or the games. And simply by going in and executing, the appropriate volume, doing the correct program for yourself, and then, doing the non-mandatory stuff that is going to move the needle the most for you, like the program will work. So don't again, lots of information shared at you. Should be more for you to think to yourself like, okay, cool. I'm getting everything's getting covered. There's some method behind the madness. As long as I stick with this phase to phase, by the time the Open or quarterfinals rolls around, I will have hit everything that is necessary for success at my respective level of competition.
Yeah, we've had internal conversations about whether we should continue to do these podcasts. They're incredibly dense with information, and we continue to do them because you guys ask for them. So, just using this as a hell yeah, we get to change up our programming a little bit. The strength is going to change. I'm not going to feel like I'm doing the same shit every single week, even though that's, sort of how a progression works, how periodized training works. It can be really helpful, I think, mentally for athletes to be like, okay, we are changing these things. And then some people have told me, I can do better in a progression of something more like the deadlift, rope climb, or snatch, GHD sit up when you tell me that that's what we're focusing on. And I just like get to that day and I'm like, okay, this is the thing that they were talking about. It's a little bit more sort
absolutely.
of buy-in there. So I think different people are going to get different stuff out of this episode. Let me look at the edit history on this bad boy. See how much dead air I can create in this podcast. So this has been my brain for over 2 months. And that's part of why,
September 10th at 10:23 a.m.
And that's honestly actually a little bit late. So this is my brain for that period of time. And then there's like 7 meetings in that period of time about this thing, and that's probably why we try to convince ourselves that we shouldn't do this style of episode anymore. So get out of it sort of what you can. I was going to say, if you're not really the type to listen to this whole thing, you won't hear this part.
You stopped being the type 45 minutes ago. Oh no. Drew, did we lose you? You did? No. Yeah, sorry.
Shit.
But I didn't know if the thing was going to keep recording and get the audio fine.
Yeah.
But
this is the content that the people want. Maybe I'll delete it. Maybe
Nice.
I don't know how. Shout out to Hunter and I, podcast producers, just fucking slinging episodes.
I feel like I'm kind of the help here. You're doing you're doing the slinging. I'm doing the staring at the screen
artificial
here,
intelligence is nice. I will say that. It's a little bit better in the audio land than it is elsewhere. All right. Phase 2, Misfit Athletics, starts Monday, November 11th. If you're new to the program, you're going to get a 2-week free trial. That means you're going to be able to see test week. You're going to be able to see week 1 of the program. I think that's all the addition that we're going to need. I think you're going to hit the ground running and really enjoy the program. And my final thoughts are, if you are not one of the top 1,000 athletes in the world, please follow the Hatchet program. You will do significantly better. It gets someone new to semifinals every single year. Did we do it?
Could be you.
Could be you.
Could be you. We did it.
Thank you for tuning in to another episode of the Misfit Podcast. Make sure you head to misfitathletics.com before Monday, November 11th to get signed up for Phase 2. And if you're looking for affiliate programming, head to teammisfit.com. We'll see you next week.
Hey.